Today's topic is the future of FinTech jobs. Very, very interesting topic and a fantastic panel of speakers. I'm really excited to hear what we discuss. With us today, we have Caroline Bond from Innovate Finance, Sabine van der Linden from, I believe, the Proposition Circle, Aldo Razzino from Open Search Network, Brooke Warden from the Rudin Group, Mark Mueller from Inupia, and Sandra Bickel from Career Angels. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Really, really excited for this. My name is Jason Schuster. I'll be the host today. I'm representing BizzTalk. And hopefully I do very little talking and let the experts share all of their knowledge with us today. To get started, what I like to do is I like to have each of our speakers take about 60 seconds, real short, to just introduce yourself and give a quick snippet of your background so that the audience just kind of understands where your perspective is coming from on each topic. So let's, no particular order, but whoever wants to get us started, just go ahead and introduce yourself, about 60 seconds, and then we'll get through everybody, and then we'll move on to the first topic. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Brooke Warden, and I'm the president of the Rudin Group. Hello,
One second, Brooke, your audio is very, very quiet.
Oh,
it's
okay.
almost, yeah, I can almost not hear you at all.
Okay, let me just go on to someone else, and I'll.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Sandra, do you want to get us started? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure.
Wonderful.
I'm representing Career Angels today. Career Angels is a company that is on the candidate side. I myself used to be an executive search consultant, as well as my team members, and we usually have candidates that want to join the FinTech space. So we are the ones helping candidates usually reprofile to be able to show that they are attractive candidates for the FinTech space.
Okay, excellent. Glad to have you with us here today, Sandra. Aldo, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'm working for Open Search Network. I started up my company 7 years ago in London. I'm a headhunter. I'm focused on technology, and I moved from ERP, BI space to data analytics environment now. So we are specialized on STEM profile, and we just launched a platform where we run data competition for our clients. So we usually run competition in order to find candidates for our clients.
Excellent. Glad to have you here, Aldo. Sabine, do we have good audio now? Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you. I apologize for a bit of technical issues. I've been on Zoom the whole day, so it was a bit strange. So Sabine van der Linden. I'm the co-founder and investor of Startup Bootcamp InsurTech. I've just decided to move on from the initiative recently, but accelerated through Startup Bootcamp InsurTech London and Hartford InsurTech Hub, over 60 startups in the InsurTech space, FinTech space. And now I use my platform, the Proposition Circle, to advise and sit on board and help those businesses scale.
Excellent, wonderful. Glad to have you here today, Sabine. Mark, you want to give us an introduction?
Yes.
And it looks like I'm not getting any video on
I tried to fix it. Probably I just make this little introduction for myself and then try to fix it. Okay,
sounds good.
Thanks. Okay, my name is Mark Mueller. I'm the CEO and founder of Profitland Network. That's a B2B platform. And out of Profitland Network, there is a spin-off, Inupia. We are building there the holistic integrated career platform. World's first it will be. It's where talents, job seekers, and companies can easily connect and build up a relationship. It's like a career development platform consisting of different parts: talent pooling, recruiting, employer branding, matching services, of course, training and performance support. Also, we offer there some services for employee onboarding, also an affiliate network connected for job seekers and for companies. And of course, very important, the critical skills gap analysis, all together with as a platform, as a service, together with other partners. So that's in short about, and from my background, I'm an ex-banker and internet marketer.
Excellent, wonderful. Glad to have you here today, Mark.
Just switch off for a second and come back.
Yep, not a problem, not a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Caroline, how about you? Give us a quick introduction.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Caroline Vaughn, I run the growth team, so business development for Innovate Finance. Innovate Finance is the industry body for FinTech, so we've been around nearly 6 years, representing the sector at large. We have a range of members, and they sit between startup companies at very early stage through to 30% of our membership base is high growth companies, both with presence in the UK, but globally as well, and then institutional clients. So that's the background of asset management, investment bank, retail bank, big tech, payment. FinTech is a lot of things to a lot of people. So if you consider yourself in the FinTech space, we want to represent you at large. And we do that through lobbying efforts. We do that through communications and marcoms, programmatic development. And we've been in the UK space kind of, I would say, since the beginning, hopefully. So it's been an interesting time. I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to see pre and post COVID, because I think talent will be a very stark representation of what that looks like.
Excellent. Really glad to have you here today, Caroline. And back to Brooke. How are we doing?
Hi, everybody. Is this better?
Way better. Much better. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Hi. Hi from Minneapolis. I'm Brooke Warden. I'm the president of the Rudin Group, and we are a boutique marketing firm specializing in working with financial services clients, and that's everyone from large enterprises to smaller fintechs. And just really happy to be here today.
Excellent. Really glad to have you here as well. And we actually had April on yesterday from the Rudin.
Yes,
so.
I joined that.
I'm actually seeing a couple of the same company names. So we've got some really great organizations here. Wonderful. Okay, let's move into the good stuff. We have 6 panelists today. It's kind of a lot. And we only have about till the hour, maybe like 10 minutes after the hour, if everyone's got time for it. So as we go through this, try to keep responses to about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. I know that there's a lot of information here, but I know that we can, between everybody here, I think we're going to cover most all of the information that there is to cover. But getting us started. According to the World Economic Forum, in the top 10 emerging jobs for 2022, the first 3 are data analysts, AI specialists, and operations managers. But how do you think that that's going to change after COVID as it applies to FinTech jobs? Is it still going to be that? Is that prediction still right? Or is it going to look a little different? And whoever wants to get us started, feel free to chime in. No particular order. We're definitely going to still get to everybody.
I would start. I would say I think COVID is going to accelerate some of those trends, actually. What we've seen amongst financial services institutions that I've been talking to for the past few weeks is that the ones who have not digitized have realized that they need to digitize pretty fast right now. We've heard that call center operation have not been working effectively, that a lot of consumers were not able to talk to agents, either to get claims paid or even to deal with basic credit card issues, amongst others. We've seen sales agents who've been used to selling also door-to-door, but in insurance, actually life insurance in some markets has still to be sold face-to-face. Regulatorily, they are not supposed to be sold via digital channels. And so what you find is a massive group of sales agents unable to work right now. So what we are going to see is that there is going to be an acceleration of digitization, automation, need for process automation as an example, and that requires data scientists and a lot of those new roles which are far more data artificial intelligence related, even cybersecurity experts will become in high demand. So I will see a lot of new jobs coming to market, I think, post-COVID.
That's fantastic insight, and I tend to agree with that as well. Let's go to I think Brooke unmuted herself, then Mark, then Caroline.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I think that this is really a great time for FinTech, right? Because there's been this migration to more flexible working arrangements, more remote work, and I think all of that plays to FinTech's favor. I also think that because there's been so much change in the labor market, there's been a lot of talent freed up from large enterprises. And I really think that FinTechs should be looking at that talent pool, looking at their own talent pool in new ways. So, maybe what they want to add some of that talent to their organizations, or perhaps to their advisory boards as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for FinTech jobs in the current environment.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Brooke. Mark, you had unmuted yourself next. Go ahead, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It's still video kind of went out again, but at least I can hear you.
I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened to my Zoom here. So
it's all right. We can still hear you, so that we'll work with that.
Cool. So could you please repeat your question?
Absolutely. So according to the World Economic Forum, the top 10 emerging jobs for 2022, the first three are data analysts, AI specialists, and operations managers. And the question is post-COVID-19, is this still going to hold true specifically for FinTech?
I think, according to my research and talks I had with quite a lot of people, I think yes. I mean, after COVID, the top skills, I would say, for future jobs in FinTech is you have to know is artificial intelligence. You have to know about that. Coding, cloud computing, and so on, quite a lot of other stuff. But to give a short answer, I think after COVID-19, the whole FinTech market will evolve. Up till now, in my opinion, it's still in the infancy, and it will evolve much faster than before, because people are now more open to try new stuff, new financial services, new apps, which give them freedom, which helps them save money or make more money. And that will give a push to financial services companies.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mark. Caroline, what are your thoughts?
So I think it's a great question. I think there's a few parts to this. So one of my favorite phrases that has come out of this is, what's digitized your business? Was it your CEO, your CTO, or COVID? So Brooke brought it up earlier. We've all been forced to digitize, which means there's certain skill sets, both when you say FinTech, it's very wide phrase. So both on an enterprise institutional basis, as well as kind of the startup community is probably better poised because they were digital first anyway. However, so from that point of view, I think those specific skill sets will continue to be important. I think the bigger piece here is when you look at the more traditional FinTech market, what our ways of working will do. So how being digital will help us be remote, and how that opens up a talent pool globally, and how people's businesses will respond to that. So early sight, and again, it's early, but across the UK, we're hearing from startups that they're moving their tech business to more national, regional areas, as opposed to where it's very expensive in London. Really good example. So if we don't all have to commute into work, then let's have our hubs be a little bit more spread out across the country. You may not go internationally for that tech talent because you may have issues with visas, et cetera. And this is very short-term thinking. But so there's those pieces. The other piece is all of us have been forced to pivot our businesses. It doesn't matter what business you're in, you've had to pivot a little bit. So Brooke brought up a really good point, which is there's incredible talent out there right now. So it's a nice time to spend to get quality. And while I think the phrase, I think the stats I heard was 50% of European startups have furloughed some of their staff. 12% say they're not hiring anymore. 26% say they are hiring exactly the same, and 44% say they've cut back on hiring, and 18% have laid off their staff. Now, those numbers in and of themselves are interesting, but what's more interesting is where they're doing that. So as you pivot, you may let go certain parts of your business, but you'll pick up high quality parts. And there's some exciting skill sets that will come out of that. Even just the skill set, if you're hiring today, do you hire a manager that's apt at working from home or a manager that's good at working in the office? And those are just skill sets to think about along the way.
Excellent. Really great insight. Thank you for that, Caroline. Sandra or Aldo, you unmuted yourself. Let's go Aldo and then Sandra, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Thanks so much.
Well, well, during COVID, the only company, the only few companies I worked for in the last few months been company in the FinTech market, been company in the payment and loans industry. So I definitely saw a slowdown of the market in the AI in general everywhere, but in the FinTech the request of candidates, I still keep receiving requests from my clients at the moment. So I think that AI, data science, and for sure the business process automation or the RPA area is going to develop a lot, even faster than before. I think I agree that at the moment we're going to look for new kind of people, new kind of candidates, because going to the office is going to be an option. It's not going to be the normal life. And there's going to be a lot of problem on the client side to let the manager understand how to manage the people at home. And there's going to be a lot of problem on the change management side. But I think on the payment side, I can see here in London, there are shops where you can see payment just with credit card. So there's going to be new kind of payment, new kind of, is a new word now. But definitely the AI and data science is going to develop a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Aldo. Sandra,
yes.
Your thoughts?
Yes. I agree with what Sabine said in terms of how COVID influences the emerging jobs for 2020. COVID definitely has accelerated that. And actually went back and I looked for the report published by the World Economic Forum, and it was a prediction they made in 2018. I found a report where they updated January 2020, so this year, even before COVID. And interestingly enough, general and operations manager wasn't even on it anymore. So when what they're now saying, and this is also what Sabine was saying and most of the panelists here, that now the emerging jobs forecast for 2022, and I think this we could already say for 2020 and 2021, artificial intelligence, data scientist, data engineer, big data developer, data analyst, analytics specialist, data consultant, etc. So there's much more, there's a much bigger need, and I agree with Sabine that the trend and the needs have been accelerated for all the reasons I think the ladies specifically mentioned, because there's an accelerated need for digitalization.
Absolutely. Data. That's all that's the big trend there for going forward to 2022. Well, with that being said, I mean, actually it really segues perfectly into our next topic. If the high demand jobs are your data analysts, your data scientists, AI specialists, what kind of soft skills are still going to be needed for those FinTech jobs? I mean, I guess when we look at those types of jobs, traditionally, we don't usually think of soft skills, but maybe, how important is that going to be? Brooke, you unmuted, and then we'll go Brooke, then Sabine.
Yeah.
And I'd love to, we'll keep this thing going.
Sure. So I think that intellectual curiosity is really important in FinTech. And I think there has to be this desire to understand the big picture and how your FinTech solution fits in with the broader ecosystem. So I think that, if you're someone who likes to think in a very siloed way, or if you're focused only on your product or your offering, I think that does not work particularly well in FinTech. So I think it's the big picture thinking and the curiosity, I think, to really understand the landscape and how what you're doing fits in. And then I think, of course, flexibility and agility. I think those attributes have always been important in terms of work style in FinTech, but I think that that's even more true today and in the current environment. So I think that ability to pivot and adapt is essential.
Excellent. Appreciate that, Brooke. Sabine, what about you? What do you think?
Yes, I would say that the world we are living in, because of all these data and those AI robots, means that we'll need to look at creativity far more. We have to become continuous learners. And the third point is, for me, inclusion and diversity. So when I look at creativity, when you actually start designing for the future, you need to understand really small segments. You are actually one segment of one. I am another segment of one. And if you look at the technology needs to treat us as different people, potentially offer us different products and services, and FinTech products and services as well, which meets our unique needs. So we need to be creative in the design, in the application of the technology to attract different customer segments in very unique ways. I remember an amazing quote from Brian Chesky when he designed Airbnb. It was really designed for a segment of one. I'm sorry going to say that, but the white male. And so when he started including a diverse team, inclusion and diversity, people from with different traits to be able to design this product differently, he got a business which ended up thriving. So the combination of creativity, inclusion, and diversity will actually design interesting product in the future. Continuous learning, we don't have a choice. If we want to be different and drive competitive advantage even for ourselves as individuals, we need to become continuous learners. And so the world we are in demand, if we are going to be tech savvy, use a lot of tech, we need to make sure that we have the soft skills to support those and differentiate from one another.
I love that. And I love you brought up Brian Chesky. He's not one of the super front and center CEOs that people talk about, but he is actually one of the people that I follow that I love him. I think he's an awesome CEO and a great innovator. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Caroline, let's go to you next.
Sabine, you teed it up perfectly. I think you're absolutely right in terms of different ways of thinking. We work really closely. So we have a program called FinTech for Schools, and it's about creating awareness for the sector for the next generation. I think there's so let's be very clear. It's a highly regulated space. We're dealing with people's money. So there's a caveat to this, but I think there's a slight branding issue, which is that only coding skills are needed in FinTech. So if you go around this table, I don't know how much of us are coders, and is that a prerequisite? So I think there's a huge piece that starts that this sector was built out primarily of the crisis, but of being customer first. And so that's a communication and a two-way communication exercise. So you have to be an incredible communicator as far as I'm concerned. It's a highly regulated space, and you need to get regulators to think differently than they've thought before. So that's where communication, but negotiation, strategy, etc. I would say communication and agility is the number one thing needed. And also, just to go back, when we say soft skills, the diversity of the team to get you to where you are is the most important part. So yes, you need the coders, but you're not going to have ethical AI unless you have somebody also checking that with a different point of view and regulatory point of view. And that's how we've gotten to be where we are today. And I think we have to continually check ourselves and adapt to what is needed today. So I think it's a sector that's actually full of soft skills. And when I talk to the next generation, I like to reinstate that this is not a bunch of coders and it's not a bunch of bankers. It's a hybrid. And Mark, nothing wrong with bankers. I think there's a lot of reformed bankers in the fintech sector, but they came to it because they had a passion for a segment of the market that they thought was underserved, and they thought they could do it differently.
I love that. Excellent. Excellent point of view there. And Mark, since you're unmuted as well, and we're talking about bankers, what do you think? What are the soft skills that we need for fintech's jobs now?
I think there are a couple of. One of them is you have to have project management skills, which for organizing and managing company processes. Of course, one other thing which is already mentioned, critical thinking, the ability to solve both vague and also complex problems, and independently. That's also important, especially now when a lot of people are working remotely. In my opinion, also emotional intelligence is a very important soft skill. And I think that's the ability to recognize their own emotions and the emotions of others, so that you can better and really understand the situations you are in, and that will also help, of course, enhance your emotional intelligence if you understand the situation you are in and the other ones of your co-workers, of your peers, of your colleagues. That's another one. And then another one is, which I apparently not good at it, communication skills, written and verbal. I have to work on it. And another one, in my opinion, is leadership. How to motivate and direct others in a way that that's for both sides very agreeable. That's something which is not so easy to do. I think, to sum it up.
Fantastic, Mark. Very, very, very good insight. Hearing a lot of good input here. Sandra, do you want to keep us going, and then we'll go to Aldo after Sandra, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Sure. When I read the report that was published in 2018 by the World Economic Forum, they did have a section that was called 2022 Skills Outlook. And what's interesting is that all the skills that have been mentioned so far are included on the list. So when you look at the top 10 list, what's also interesting, and it does represent everything that has been said so far, half of the soft skills are left brain soft skills and half of them are right brain soft skills. So there is this very evident need to have a balance, to not only say, okay, analytical is important, but also active learning, not only creativity, but technology. Then we have critical thinking and leadership, and we have emotional intelligence and critical thinking and reasoning and analysis. So you can see that there's this clear balance of what's needed. And in those top 10, half is left brained, half is right brained. And on those top 10, all the skills that I've mentioned so far are there.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Sandra. Aldo, how about you?
Well, you all mentioned most of the skills that I think are really important in any job, in every job. I mean, I think now that everyone is gonna work remotely, it's gonna be even more important to have an agile mindset and to have empathy with your teammates, because let's be clear, I mean, every time I send a message on WhatsApp, it's really a short message, and you're not going to be able to explain the meaning of the message because the person is not going to be on your desk, or in front of your desk, or you're not going to have a coffee time to explain yourself. So it's going to be really difficult to listen. It's going to be really important to listen, really difficult to understand and to listen at the same time. And that's, I think, is one of the most important skill at the moment that everyone needs to learn. I moved my company full remote at beginning of March. We're not going to have any more an office, and it's really well, it's a big step also from a management point of view, also from a trust point of view, because you need to trust your employees. At the same time, the employees need to trust you the same way, without doubt, from the first day. And this is really tough to implement from a management point of view.
Excellent. I have very, very, very good insight. All of this, fantastic. And actually, the more that I hear, the more I'm like, gosh, the modern worker in FinTech has to be really skilled. I mean, they've got a lot that they need to live up to. And I mean, which is not a bad thing, right? I mean, we as a civilization, we want our workers to continually get better and better and better. And, you know, I would say it's easier now more than ever, right? Through technology to be able to improve ourselves. So that's good. But, you know, moving on to the next topic, this is good. Someone who wants to get a job in FinTech right now, how do they go about getting that role that they really, really want to get? I'd love for each of you to share just a couple of your best tips for someone who's trying to get a job in FinTech right now. Okay, so not necessarily post-COVID, but right now. We'll start with Brooke, and then we'll keep it going.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing to start with is to be a part of the community and to follow the influencers and the thought leaders that are part of the community. So read their content, ask questions, and contribute, have something to say. I think that's really, really important. I also think that, especially now, there's been such an explosion of virtual learning opportunities that are free or very low cost. So really opportunities to interact with thought leaders, influencers in the sector, probably more than, you know, ever. And so I would say, you know, take full advantage of those opportunities. And I think it is a community where the opportunities bubble up organically, and you want to be there. You want to be part of the community when that happens, because I think it's probably more likely that the opportunity will present itself in that way, as opposed to more of a traditional job posting.
I like that. Great insight, Brooke. Caroline, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Brooke, I love that. I think it's so important, and to just illustrate how tight the community is and that there are such influencers and accessibility. I would say there's a Venn diagram of this, which is get into the community, be super involved, but also find what you care about within that community, because if you don't have a passion for it, it's very transparent, I would say. If you aren't knowledgeable, if you don't have a passion for it. But my more pragmatic side says follow the money, because there is money still going out there. There are funding rounds that we've continued to see. There's a lot of challenge for talent, but be very knowledgeable about who's received funding recently. What are they going to do with that funding? So how are they going to expand their business? And what does that mean? How do you position yourself to that? And then, as Brooke said, there's so many resources out there, and it's just an awareness. I think we're jumping the gun a little bit to think that everybody knows what FinTech is as a sector that's a cool job to be in. So to continue to create the awareness outside of just our sector that this is a great job opportunity, and that you don't need to go to Google or a big bank, that there's a lot of brands that you may not know about that sit in between. And just my advice always is to look at the job boards, but also always go to the venture websites, because they put all of their portfolio jobs up there. So it's a nice aggregate of what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Caroline. Sabine.
Sure. So to follow Caroline's comments, funding is happening right now. Even though we thought that there would be no funding, I think the estimate is probably 50% of the prediction we were expecting for the year in most sectors. There are a lot of rounds which are happening right now. I get the bit every day around the funding rounds which are coming through. So definitely looking at those startups which have just raised and just received money will be a great way to find a job right now. Looking at sources like F6S, AngelLists, I remember when I started helping my startups, even finding their own founders, co-founders, or employees to actually work for their startups. We used to have, okay, the Silicon Roundabout here in London, where we'd go to events. Eventbrite is a great place actually today to find events, to participate and see what actually co-founders or founders are looking for, because they will still attend those events like the events we have right now. Very important. And then actually the community aspect is also very important, to share, to actually show interest, and also start building a view of what one core strengths and competencies are, because you want to do something you like. Even if you work remotely, you want to do something you love. So being sure around, you know, the type of things one want to do, and started contributing to the community through discussion, sharing articles, and other tools and techniques as well. People want to learn all the time.
Absolutely, excellent. Thank you so much, Sabine. Let's see. How about Sandra? What are your top tips trying to get a job in fintech right now? What would you tell someone?
I have the feeling that the tips shared so far have one underlying assumption, that the candidates are qualified to get those jobs. So my tip would actually be to, instead of getting right into the networking and following and commenting and asking questions, to maybe take a day or two or even a week or two to assess yourself and assess your candidacy, to understand, why am I an attractive candidate? What do you bring the fin? Do I bring the tech? Or is it maybe something from the skills that maybe I have all 10 skills that are necessary in the fintech industry? And once the candidate understand where they stand, and if they realize, yes, okay, I'm indeed an attractive candidate, then do all the things that have already been mentioned. Learn the ecosystem, understand, would you feel more comfortable in a startup? Startup isn't for everybody, or maybe a bit more institutionalized, maybe a mature startup. Networking is important, etc. But if you are not an attractive candidate, then spend the extra week, 2 or month or 2 or even half a year to sharpen the skills, to do, I mean, there's Coursera, there's Udemy, and really do first the work, improve your skills, and then do the things that we've already mentioned.
I love that. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. We're going to talk a little bit more about skills in the next topic, but you got to have the skills to do the things. So I love that. Let's go to Aldo, and then we'll finish off with Mark, and then we'll move into our final topic.
Well, it's difficult to add some other things on all the topics that have been touched at the moment, but I would suggest to look for some competition, for some hackathons, because once you study a lot, once you learn a lot, hackathons and competition could be a good place to put in practice your experience or your competence. And it's also a way to try out different industry, maybe a different side of the industries. And from a client point of view, is the perfect way to create a pipeline and to technically evaluate in one shot maybe 20, 30 candidates. So I think competition at the moment, everyone is at home, unfortunately. Most of us are at home, unfortunately. So we have a lot of time to study, but let's play a little bit more.
I like that. I know some people have probably been working from home for a while. I know myself, I've been working from home for a number of years. So when COVID happened, my life didn't really change that much, except my kids stayed home instead of going to school. That made it a little bit harder to stay focused and to work on personal development, that kind of thing. But you're absolutely right, Aldo. Mark, your thoughts, your top tips. Someone who wants to get a job in fintech right now, what are your tips?
I would say, first of all, I would find out why I really want to work in fintech. Are you passionate about it? And what exactly is it? Is it more the payment sector? Is it more an app, or is it in the wealth sector or whatever? And if I know exactly what I want, then I have to find a way to get the job there by doing my research. That means which companies do I want to work only remote or on-site, and or both. Is both possible? And then I have to find out where I want to work really. I mean, and what kind of work I capable of doing with my hard and soft skills, my background, my experience. And then I would try to evaluate all the companies, from startups to the bigger ones, you know, and to find out where the respective people are hanging out, you know. Are they in special groups? Are they go to special meetups and so on? And to find more information about it, you know, to get familiarized with the whole idea of working in fintech. It's not that easy, especially if you come from the banking side, you know. That's quite a gap, you know, quite a jump, you know, to go from a bank to a fintech company. And that's why this step must be very well thought through. And afterwards, you know, there are so many platforms, of course, around where you can just look up if they have jobs available, you know, and then you can find out really what they really want, and then you can try through your networking to find the right person, you know, not being in the queue of 100 people, but find the right person you can talk to or send your CV to. That's something which is not so easy. It takes time, but I would say it's worth the time. Yes, so that's for the moment.
No, absolutely, Mark. I appreciate that. I actually really like that. Identify the part of fintech that you actually want to be in. Fintech is huge. It's so broad. I mean, fintech covers everything from payments to banking to robo-advisors to cryptocurrency. I mean, it's a big sector. And I think that it does take a little bit of time and research and soul searching to figure out what part of this big new industry do I really want to be a part of. So that's great advice. Great advice from all of you. Wow, awesome, loving it. So moving into the next topic, this is our last topic, and I think we should be able to end right about on the hour if we go over a few minutes. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, awesome, wonderful. So something that Caroline mentioned earlier is awareness, right? You know, we have kind of two elements of the current workforce or future workforce. People right now who are wanting to make a change over into fintech. There are people that are already in fintech, of course, but then we also have the new workforce coming up, right? Teenagers, kids who just started college, you know, and they're just starting to become aware of this fintech space. What advice do we give to teenagers who are trying to build their career in fintech from the ground level, right, from their education up, or people who are trying to make a change over into fintech and have to, as Sandra talked about, get new skills? Okay, what advice do we give to these two groups of people? Caroline, how about you get us started? You unmuted, and this again, you kind of mentioned awareness earlier, and then we'll keep it going.
Quick draw. I think you absolutely tapped upon the skills of what the sector needs today. I think this sector came out, I would argue that it came out of the financial crisis, but it also came out of the fact that we got digital. So we had a handheld phone in a device, and our behaviors changed by other influences. So we went digital across everything we did. So we expected that of financial services. FinTech came out of being customer first. So I'm going to actually probably go counter to what I anticipate my other speakers to say, which is to say to the next generation, and I grew up in California, so this sounds very California. You are the next generation. Your way of using your products is the most important thing. It's what we're all trying to achieve, is to better understand your market segment. So you look at the likes of Revolut, or I think HSBC even did it. Everybody's trying to have a younger demographic within their customer base because they want to have them as loyal customers throughout. So don't underestimate your point of view, your behaviors, and how that could help shape the products of the future. Now, I give the same advice that I gave in my last question, which is follow the money, figure out what you're passionate about, but my advice is to not stay within the framework that we have today, because it's changing so quickly. You look at open banking, you look at the way we're going to share data cross-sectorially. I just use your knowledge of how you use products and have faith that you can have a vision around the future of financial services that the FinTech today doesn't necessarily have.
Love that. Thank you so much, Caroline. Yeah, that does sound very California. You nailed it, but I like it. I like it. Who wants to keep it going for us? Again, no particular order, just whoever wants to jump on it. Go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the teenager part first because I'm the mother of 2 teenage daughters. And I just think that internships are great. And that always stands out to me when someone has shown the commitment to do an internship in a particular field. I think it's really a great way to get some hands-on experience and learning. So I really recommend that. And I really like what Caroline said about the next generation adding their perspective or point of view to what's happening, because that's incredibly valuable to fintechs, to financial services companies that are large enterprises. They want that perspective, and it's not like they know the right answer and want you to get to the right answer. They really want to know what you think. So I really think that is huge value that the next gen can add as well. And then in terms of reskilling or upskilling, if you're looking to enter FinTech after a career in another field, I think, again, be a sponge and be part of the community, participate in events like this, and try to build a story that shows how your experience and your skills translate into FinTech. If you look for those connection points, you'll find them. You'll be able to develop your own narrative or your own story about how your skills translate to FinTech. And when I think you combine that with where your passion is, I think that's a really strong combination.
Absolutely. Love that, Brooke. Thank you so much. Sabine, how about you? And then we'll go to Aldo after Sabine.
Sure, Doc, can you repeat the question? I want to see whether I can also address the other part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, essentially, it's what advice would you give to a teenager who is hoping to someday get a job in FinTech? So maybe they're early college or they're about to go into college. What advice would you give them for trying to build that career towards FinTech? But also, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to make a big change, who's looking to jump from a different industry over to FinTech in terms of reskilling or upskilling? So getting new skills or upgrading the skills that they have.
So interestingly, when you look at the second part around upskilling, what I've seen when I was delivering the accelerator programs for the past 5 years is that on one side you have the young people coming out of university schools thinking that it's really cool to be an entrepreneur, and so wanting to do an internship or spending some time with the startups doing variety of roles. So getting to even digital accelerators now will need to have people helping their young businesses with their scaling of their core capabilities. So I would say, try new things, try things you are not even thinking about doing, just to actually test whether you are going to like FinTech. But what we also have seen is people who are going to retirement, executives, even CEOs of companies wanting to do what I call the reverse mentoring, where they would want to see and work with a young venture to actually see what they don't know. It's a little bit like the iceberg. We don't know what we don't know. And so that part which is underneath the water is one of the area which is actually increasing every day. And even older executives and expert people in finance or insurance are looking to learn what they don't know. And so that reverse mentoring and working with young businesses is a great way to actually start testing the skill set they may actually also need within their enterprises and within their teams to make sure they remain relevant.
I love that. Fantastic. Thank you, Sabine. Aldo, your thoughts.
Yeah.
What advice would you give?
Well, we analyzed our database and all the placement we made in the last 7 years. They were all placement in the STEM area, and we then tried to understand the difference between the placement we made by industries. And what we saw is that in the fintech industry, in the financial technology area, on the data science and the data area, side of the job, you need to have a lot more skills than in other side of in other industries, because the fintech area is really data driven since the beginning. Instead of other industry, they are moving to the data driven environment. So maybe in other industry, you need to have more soft skill and more broad knowledge about the processes. Instead of in the fintech, at the beginning, you need to have a really deep knowledge of the technology. So yeah, as Sandra said, you need to study. You need to study a lot from the technical side. And talking about reskilling, I think that, well, definitely we need young people for the technology side, and we need other people from for the processes. I mean, they know the processes and they need to teach someone the processes. I mean, if not, there's not going to be transfer knowledge between experience. So yeah, that's my thought.
Excellent. Thank you, Aldo. Very, very, very good. Let's go to Mark. You're unmuted, and then we'll go to Sandra to round us out, and then we'll actually be finished with our webinar today.
I would say to a teenager, be open-minded and find out if you are really interested in fintech. And try to find a way to find out as much information as possible to really make this decision. Yes, I want to be in fintech, and then try to find out what is needed to get such a job. And if you have a gap of knowledge, skills, or I don't know, even a degree, you know what you have to do. And for an upskilling, I would say there are many programs out there, as already mentioned, from Coursera, Udemy, but also from universities like MIT, Stanford, and so on, where you can make or take such courses and fill the gap of your knowledge. That's very important, you know, so that you can really get the information and the experience and also the skill sets needed for such a job.
Absolutely, Mark. And I'm so glad that you mentioned, bigger universities offering programs. I'm starting to see, programs that have traditionally been very closed off and limited, right? Harvard, yes. Wharton, Stanford, MIT, Oxford, and they're offering these online courses, 6 to 8 weeks, but they're being taught by the world leaders in those topics. I mean, if you can put the money together, it'd be a huge career boost to have that knowledge and also have that credential on your resume. Fantastic. Glad you mentioned that. Sandra, what about you? What would you recommend?
I think I would pick up on what Aldo said, and that would be a piece of advice I think I would give to both teenagers and, let's say, the lateral candidates wanting to join FinTech. For the technical people, not to underestimate the business side, to actually want to understand how does it actually, what are the business consequences of technology. On the other hand, to not underestimate the technology when you're on the business side. So that's one, and I think that's equally relevant for both the teenagers and the more experienced among us, and particularly for the teenagers, because especially with the hard skills, and Deloitte has done some research into that. The hard skills, let's say programming language or hard skill know-how that we learn today have a half-life of 4.5 years. So even if I learn something today in 4 to 5 years, it's not relevant anymore anyway. So, but there are skills, especially the soft skills, that are, what's the word? They're there forever. And again, studies say and show that today's teenagers, they don't have a problem navigating the mobile phone. They have problems with communication, emotional intelligence. They have challenges with expressing themselves, understanding other people, leadership. So here an additional, and I think again, Aldo said it very well, it is a very demanding space, because you need not only one side, but you need and the fin and the tech, plus all the skills that were mentioned today. So especially with the teenagers, I think it would be, don't forget, on top of the know-how, the hard skills, don't forget about really developing the soft skills under the assumption that you really want to grow with the startup, with the company, and not get stuck at a more technical level. But if you want to be a manager, join a board, then you do need to develop the soft skills.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sandra. This was, I have to say, I think this was one of the better webinars that we've ever had here. I really appreciate this panel. All of you had fantastic advice, very concise, and we kept it in a reasonable time, but highly relevant. Holy cow. Just, I mean, anyone who's looking to get a job in FinTech after watching this webinar, I think that they've got some good ammunition to go out there and make it happen. So thank you so much to all of you for being here, for sharing your knowledge. To you, Sandra, Brooke, Sabine, Caroline, Mark.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I would say, if you guys are okay, maybe the audience, if they had further questions for you, could they reach out to you on LinkedIn or on the BizzTalk platform, anything like that?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Excellent.
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Would love to have all of you back again in the future, because we're gonna keep doing these for FinTech because it's highly relevant, and I get to meet just great people. So thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you soon. Bye.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Great week.